All right, I am so excited today to welcome Ryan Blaser to our podcast. He is the CEO and founder of Test My Home. This is a company dedicated to enhancing health by identifying and addressing toxic environmental exposures. And Ryan's expertise is in building biology, electrical engineering, and environmental toxicology, which enables him to investigate homes for hidden dangers like mold, EMFs, and poor air quality. His personal journey through mold exposure and lead poisoning drove him to help others achieve wellness by creating healthier living environments. Welcome, Ryan. I am so excited to have this conversation because this is such a big deal in terms of eczema and anyone with chronic conditions, chronic skin issues. So, welcome, Ryan, to the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
All right. Well, Ryan, I'd love to first of all know, how did you get into this? How did you get into working through environmental toxins?
I think I've just always been fascinated about how the environment affects our body for positive or negative. And, my first business in my 20s, I had a company where we were designing and building recording studios and broadcast centers and churches and high-end restaurants where we really need to stimulate people's senses. And we use sound and video and lighting and acoustics and smells and layout and anything that could trigger the body for a positive response. But then I got sick because I moved into a home. I wasn't aware that it had a mold issue. It had a pretty severe mold issue, and I got really sick from it. Finally went to a functional medicine doctor after about 4 or 5 other traditional doctors that found out that I had high levels of mold toxicity along with some lead poisoning because I had a project I was working on an old car. I was grinding on the metal and breathing it in. Uh, Detox from that and realize, there's a negative side to this environment. The environment that is around us can also cause negative issues. And so I went back to school and learned as much as I could about the negative impacts, and then just kind of combined it all together and created this company to provide ultimate living space for people.
That's so awesome, because one thing that I do when I first work with a patient is I have a checklist of the top things they need to do to analyze their environment and figure out if there are any toxicities that are harming them from the outside. Because, part of what happens to us when we have chronic disease are the things that we are absorbing, inhaling, eating. And so I love this. And when I found your company and when I found what you do, I was like, this is exactly what I've been looking for to help my patients really assess their environment. So tell us what are some of the things we need to start thinking about. And let's start in the different departments, because I know in your kit that you have for Test My Home, you have different departments like EMFs and VOCs. And so can you tell me, just break those down for me?
Yeah, you bet. And so we'll look at air quality in general. What are we breathing into our lungs? What's affecting us? What's in the air around us? And that can be biological things, that can be mold spores, that can be microplastics, insect parts, insect feces, all kinds of nasty stuff in the air that we're breathing in. So air quality is a big one. And then kind of mold, which is a subcategory of that, but really is a big topic. It's one of the biggest things that I believe is affecting people's health, along with some others. Um, and then we have the chemicals, and that's also kind of in the air as well. But what chemicals are we using on our property, in our house? The pesticides, the herbicides, the personal care products, the cleaning supplies. All of these things can create this toxic soup in our house, and we breathe that in, and it affects our own chemistry. We are electrical chemical beings, and anytime we interfere with that, we're going to cause disturbances in the body. And then we look at the water that we're drinking, but also the water that we're bathing and showering in. You can absorb just as much contaminants from taking a nice hot steamy shower as you do from drinking the water during the day. So it's really critical that we monitor what's coming into our house in the water and make sure we have the proper filtration. And then we look at the EMF levels. So that's going to be these unnatural energies that are coming off of the technology that we have in our house. So the Bluetooth, the cell phones, the laptops, the wireless printers and keyboards and mouse and all the things that are good technology that makes our life easier. Unfortunately, they come at a price. And like I said, our bodies are the electrical beings. Our brain, our heart, our nervous system, they all work on these electrical impulses. And when we overlay these artificial frequencies, it causes a lot of issues. And then another thing we look at is lighting. So we evolved on this planet with the sun. It's not a coincidence that we sleep when the sun goes down and we're awake when the sun is up, and we get those cues from the sun, not only the color, but the intensity and the direction. When the sun starts to go down, ancestrally, we had fires and candles and lanterns at this orange and red glow, and that's what triggers the body to start producing melatonin and getting us ready for sleep. And then we also look at the sound and vibration and then the layout of the house. So we don't really think of noise mostly as a toxic exposure, but if you live next to an airport or a train, it doesn't take long to realize how much that can actually affect you, or a barking dog in the middle of the night. All these things can cause stress on the body. And so anything in the environment, and when I say environment, I mean, I'm not talking about like rainforests and oceans and stuff. I'm talking about the walls that we live in. We spend 90 to 92% of our lives inside these walls, either in our vehicle or at work or at home. And so we want to look at the building like our second skin. So the things that are inside this enclosure right here are different than if we walk outside. And you can tell if you go outside for a while and then come back in your house and smell it, it definitely has a different smell to it. It has a different feel to it as well. And so our whole goal is to reproduce nature as much as we can inside the home.
I love that. I love that the building is your second skin. I'm going to use that one because it's so important. And I love what you're saying, because I think when I see people with chronic conditions and skin conditions, eczema, it's actually a lot of it. What I like to say is there's something going on in the pillars of health. And those pillars of health are everything you're talking about. It's the natural things we should be doing in order to be healthy. And we're just not doing that in our world today, in our society today. And so I love what you're doing, working through the second skin to really make sure that we have what we call at Clean Body a clean enviro, or a clean environment, because that's really a pillar of health. So can you break down each of those sections? And I know that there were quite a few, because there are a lot of things we need to think about. It can get very overwhelming for a patient when they have to sit and think about this. I love that you have a kit that makes it easier. But if we were going to try to do this and just kind of start to do little things at home, and we broke it into each section, what can we do in each of those sections? Maybe you can give me like a top 3 in terms of what we can just start doing right now in each of those sections.
Yeah, as far as air quality, there's two main parts to the air quality. One is bringing fresh air into the house. A lot of these newer homes are built so airtight that we're just breathing in and out the same air, and we're not getting fresh air in, and the CO2 levels can go up. And so if you're not in a super humid climate, or it's not smoky or pollution outside, it's a good idea to crack the window at least 15 minutes a day, open some windows and get some fresh air in. Even if it's really hot or cold, that's fine, but we want to recycle and get some fresh air inside the house. Then the second thing to air quality is filtration. And so making sure that your HVAC system, that make sure the fan is on so that it's constantly filtering, but also check your air filter and make sure that the one that you're using is a high quality, high rated filter that's going to catch a lot of these smaller particles. And then you can also use standalone units, Jasper, Air Doctor. There's a whole range of these different air purifiers that are going to help pull these contaminants out of the air. So think fresh air and clean air, two different things. When it comes to chemicals in the house, there's an app called EWG, Environmental Working Group, and you can scan different the barcode on different products that you're bringing in. So your personal care products, the things you're cleaning your house with, you can scan and see how healthy these products are. And they rate on a scale from 1 to 10, and anything 3 or higher we don't allow in our house. So we kind of set that standard, and that takes a lot of stuff out of the picture. And so really what we're using a lot of times is half distilled water, half distilled vinegar with a little lemon essential oil in there. And that's our multi-purpose cleaner. We clean the majority of our surfaces with that. We use hypochlorous acid, which is the force of nature product for more like around the toilets, things where there's germs on the cutting boards. We use baking soda to clean the dishes with. We use natural products for our laundry, vinegar, a lot of times with some essential oil. It doesn't really take a whole lot of these chemicals to clean our house. A lot of it's just in the action of wiping it down. And so keeping it really clean. Also, not using pesticides inside your house and outside if you can avoid it. Weeds, if you have weeds, pick them by hand. Don't spray a bunch of Roundup and stuff, especially if you have pets or kids that are out playing on your lawn. So that's kind of the chemical aspect of it. Um, as far as mold, the name of the game with mold is keeping your house dry. Mold needs water to grow. And so if we can keep the water out of the house, um, keep the leaks out, keep the condensation out. If a toilet overflows, if something happens, clean it up immediately, get it dried out really good. It's best not to have carpet, use solid surfaces because you can clean the surface. You never know what's going on beneath the carpet. Do regular inspections around your house. Look for things that aren't right, that doesn't look good, like if there's any bubbling in the paint or discoloration or warping of the wood around your house, or you see cracks around your windows where it rains, water comes in. All these areas are signs that we need to investigate a little bit further because there's potential water damage, which means mold. And so really critical just to keep the house dry. And there's regular testing you can do with ERMI and dust analysis and things to see kind of what the mold load of your house is. And typically, if you're looking for a new home, the newer the home, the better as far as mold, because we have more of a history of what's happened. We typically see these older homes have a much higher mold load just because more things have happened. The toilet overflowed, the kids are playing in the bathtub and splashing every night and in the sinks, and little leak here and there, and all of a sudden it adds up to a pretty high mold load in the house. So keep the home dry, monitor your water is the big one there. And so when it comes to water, really, there's not very much water in the United States coming out of the tap that I would want to drink. There's microplastics found in most of the water now, pharmaceuticals, the forever chemicals, and then not to mention whatever else is in the ground, depending on where you live. It can have arsenic or lead or uranium. So it's really critical that we filter our water for showering and bathing and our cooking and drinking. So that's really important. So make sure you're filtering the water. When it comes to EMF, the biggest thing with EMF is trying to hardwire things as much as you can. So if you have a wireless keyboard and mouse, better to use a wired version. If you have Ethernet or you're working in an office and you can hardwire, which means physically connecting your computer or laptop to the modem, that's going to be a lot better because then you can turn your laptop on airplane mode. Another thing is using your technology wisely. So making parts of the day when you're not using your phone. Like let's say during dinner time with family, everyone has their phone on airplane mode. We don't need to have our phones out for dinner time. Or if you're at the gym working out, no reason to have your phone on, distracting you. Or if you're at work, we're doing this podcast right now. My phone's on airplane mode. There's no reason to have it on and be getting that exposure because really the cell phone is the number one exposure that we get because it's with us all the time. It's on and it's high power. It has to talk sometimes 10, 15 miles to the nearest cell tower. And so it's really important that we put it on airplane mode when we're not using it, but also distance it away from us. So if you are expecting a phone call, instead of having it in your pocket on your lap, maybe have it on the desk, arm's reach away. Even 3 feet away reduces exposure by 90%. It's because of the energy. Um, so that's the thing. And you can put it on timers as well, like your Wi-Fi router, so that at night when you go to sleep, your Wi-Fi will shut off automatically. Sleeping is really critical. That's when we're doing a lot of healing and our body's repairing and getting ready for the next day. And our bodies can sense that EMF level, almost like light frequency, and it can cause interference. And we're not going to get as deep of a sleep. And so turning off our electronics at night before we go to bed is a big one. In fact, we go a little bit further. We turn our circuits off to our sleeping area around our bedroom, so we get a much deeper sleep. Now, when it comes to lighting, the biggest thing to remember with lighting is we want to mimic what the sun is doing. So if the sun is overhead and bright, we want to have our overhead can lights on, full spectrum lighting. Now, not all blue lighting is bad in the middle of the day. In fact, blue lighting is what suppresses the melatonin and keeps our body awake. Where it becomes a problem is when it's a big spike of blue light, like the fluorescence and the cool white and these bright LEDs. They have an abnormal amount of blue. And then we're looking into our screens that have an abnormal amount of blue, and that can be dangerous for us. But during the day, we want a nice full spectrum, a smooth color spectrum. That's what our sun is putting out. So getting as much natural lighting in as we can. So opening up your blinds, getting that lighting in. Work in an office that has a nice open window to the outside. Getting outside as much as you can too. If you can go take a walk after lunch, or if you need to make some phone calls, or if you got a meeting that you can take outside on the phone, take those opportunities to do that, or have your dinner out on your morning coffee out on the patio. Any excuse you can to get outside and tune our body with the natural light, the better off we're going to be. But yeah, mimic what the sun is doing. So when the sun starts to go down and we get those red and the amber colors, the sunset, that's the kind of lighting we want to have in our house. And then once the sun goes all the way down, the intensity of the light needs to come down in our house. We don't want the bright lights. And that's where a lot of people get in the trouble is as soon as the sun goes down, then they flip on all their bright lights, sit in front of the TV or their screen, and they're flooding their eyes with all this bright blue intense light, and it's tricking the body thinking, oh well, it's still daylight, it's not bedtime yet. And that's what throws off our circadian rhythm. And when it comes to sound and vibration, just be aware of what noises and sounds you have. Do you have a fridge that's got a vibration every time it turns on? Do you have a fan? Or some people like a little white noise if you're in the city and you're trying to mask some of the noise. Other people, like out in the country, just like it really quiet. I'm the kind that likes it really quiet. And so I'm looking around like what in my house is making noise. But on top of that, I like to play some nice music in the background. So whatever my favorite playlist, especially if I'm feeling stressed or something, I'll always want to pop on that music, just have it playing in the background. Whatever your favorite song is always seems to help bring you out of that stress if you're feeling it. Um, so that's kind of main digging in a little bit deeper of each of those categories.
That was amazing. That was so helpful. Thank you so much. And if you're listening into this, just save this, because these all of these tips are so important. These are the things that I usually tell my patients right at the get-go. It can be a little overwhelming, so you just take it one step at a time. And when it is overwhelming, I think that's when it's really great to hire someone like you. So I was so excited to find you. And I was thinking, there must be someone who's doing this, who's going into people's homes and checking the toxicities in the environment. So I think what you do is so important. Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like? Because I know you go into people's homes, but then you also have a kit. Can you tell me a little bit about those things?
Yeah. And so a lot of people use me like they would a fitness coach or a nutrition coach or something, because like you said, it's not a one-time deal, it's a progression, it's a sliding scale, and we meet people where they're at. It's kind of like with their diet. Some people are eating McDonald's every day and we have a long way to go with them. Other people are pretty dialed in and we're just trying to fine tune it. So it's the same thing with your environment. you know, People hire me on a consulting basis, and we jump on Zoom calls and we walk through their house together and we go through each one of these topics and we dive in really deep. And we go through everything, and we do the low-hanging fruit stuff first, then we do more of the obvious things that we can see. And just that alone, there's so much value from just jumping on a phone call and doing a Zoom consultation. But we get to a certain point where we start needing to do some laboratory samples and laboratory testing. So we put together a kit that we collect water and you send that to the lab. We collect some dust and we send that to the lab. We have EMF meters, a gas leak detector meter, a carbon monoxide meter, a whole range of different equipment, and then some forms, and then some easy videos to walk through to show you how to take those readings. And so once we've gone through and kind of done the easy stuff, then you can take these samples and take this data points, and we can go over that and look for more of the deeper stuff. And if even past that, if we need to, we can come out in person and do the work for you. And so that's kind of the three different levels of how we work with people.
That's really great. And I love, starting where people are at, meeting them where they're at. Because I do know this can be really overwhelming. And I think it is starting by just doing those top three things that even you just recommended right now, and just starting there. I think things like turning your phone on airplane mode is such a good recommendation, because that phone is by us all the time. So I highly agree with that. I highly agree with that, turning off the Wi-Fi at night, and going even one step further, as you said, is just kind of all the electronics in the bedroom, because sleep is so important. That's how we regenerate. That's how we heal. So if you're dealing with a chronic condition like eczema, we need to heal. And so those things are so important. And actually, and in my family, we do the same thing at night. When the lights come down, we actually dim those lights. We turn on some red lights when we get to our bedroom. When we're getting ready for bed, we have these little red lights we got from Amazon. And that has made all the difference, So I think even just these simple things can really just start to change things. And then you can dive deeper. And I think that's where a specialist like you is so wonderful and just such a wonderful tool. So I love what you're doing. Um, and what are some resources that you might recommend? You said EWG. Are there any other really great resources that you might recommend to our listeners where they can just kind of learn more? Of course, like your website, tell us where we can find you. And then what are other resources, books, things like that?
Yeah, so testmyhome.com is our website. We have on there, you can go to our podcast and our media section, and we've done probably 50 podcasts by now. And we have a ton of good content, a lot of good YouTube stuff, YouTube shorts. There's for days you can learn so much there. Because I've talked with a lot of other smart people like you, and so there's a lot of good information, not just my information, but other people's information there as well. Our Instagram is also at Test My Home, and same thing. We're always posting interviews and content and learning and tools and everything. So those two are really good resources. There's a website called Breezeometer, and it tells you the air quality right now where you're at. It tells you fires, it's smoke, pollution, pollen, grass pollen, trees, all the different things that are in the outside air. So that's good to monitor that, especially if you wondering, should I open my windows or not? Is it pollution outside? That's a good app for that. Airnow.gov is also another one that's a good one. There's two apps. One of them is called antennasearch.com, and it will tell you what cell towers are around your house and 5G towers. Another one is maprad.io. It's more of an advanced one, but that will also tell you the cell towers around your house. Um, so those are some really good resources you can use if you want more of the scientific data on some of this stuff, because a lot of people listen like, oh, I want to tell my husband about this, he doesn't believe in this stuff. Then there's a website called Environmental Health Trust, EHS, and they have all of the scientific studies put together, so they're easy to find, and they're staying current on the latest technology and the latest studies on the technology, and so that's a really good resource for the data.
Thank you so much for all those resources. That's so wonderful. Can you tell me what you have seen, in helping people to clean up all of these toxicities? Have you seen changes in chronic disease, issues like sleep and skin issues and other things? Have you seen changes in the people you're working with?
Oh yeah, lots and lots of changes. I mean, we've seen cancer turn around, we've seen marriages saved, we've seen kids' skin issues go away, we've seen Alzheimer's symptoms get better, ADHD symptoms get better, even go away. I mean, across the whole gamut, I believe, we have the different pillars of health. You got your nutrition and your mental care and spirituality, and the environment, is a big one, I think, that a lot of people don't give a lot of attention to. But when you get everything dialed in, you start to see dramatic changes in the body.
Yeah, it's one of the clean pillars for us at Clean Body. We have five of them. We have clean food, clean
Mhm.
fitness, clean enviro is, a really big one, clean mind and clean routine. Clean routine is where you're making sure that circadian rhythm is working really well, drinking water, etc. So you actually
Perfect.
touched upon a lot of these today, which is really, really awesome. I actually wanted to ask, so you said marriages are saved. What does that mean? How is a marriage saved by cleaning up the environment?
So I had a couple that called me and they were having some issues and they thought potentially mold. And when they first did the consultation with me, they were sitting apart. They could tell they're kind of feisty with each other and they weren't getting along. I mean, you could feel the energy over the thing. And we did the full walkthrough. We found they had a serious mold problem in their crawl space. The whole crawl space was infested with mold. So I got them to move out. We fixed all the mold. It took like a 6, 8 month process. Finally able to move back in, did a deep cleaning. They had to get rid of some of their stuff. And about 6 months later, after the whole thing was done, they'd scheduled an appointment with me, and I didn't know what it was about. But they got on, and they're like, "I just wanted to tell you that you saved our marriage." Like they were on the verge of getting divorced. They were at each other's throat. They were irritable, and they were not getting along. They moved out, starting getting along. After all the mold was fixed, they moved in, and they were fine with. They realized the mold, whatever species it was making them so irritable they just couldn't stand to be around each other. Well, the crazy thing is that they actually bought that house from a divorced couple, and they found out that that couple ended up getting back together after they moved out of the house as well. So it's crazy to think that the environment can have that much of an impact. on our daily lives, and we don't even think about that.
That is an amazing story. And I think it really depicts how important that second skin of your environment is, because having mold affects all of your systems. I mean, from your mental health to your immune system. And yes, it can make you very irritable. You're going to have a hard time sleeping. So, of course, you're going to be very irritable with your spouse. So I think that just really depicts how important it is to really pay attention to your environment. What about skin issues? Have you seen anyone with skin issues that where they clean things up and maybe their skin issues improve?
Yeah, I had a client in LA and a bigger name, and then she was having these rashes and these skin issues and couldn't figure out what it was. But when she would travel away, the skin issues would go away. And we realized she didn't have a filter on her water. She was just showering in the regular water coming out of the tap. And we put a water filter on it. Well, we tested it first, and there was a bunch of contaminants in there. A lot of it was the disinfectant byproduct when they treat this water, and they put a bunch of stuff in there to make it so that it won't kill you right away. These were affecting her skin, and so her eyes would get puffy and rash. And as soon as we put that water filter on there, all that stuff went away. And she had for years tried creams and all kinds of different stuff. She thought it was her makeup. She didn't come down to be her water. Um, but also, one thing I've noticed too is that EMF may not be the one thing that causes a lot of these issues, but they make the issues worse. And they also cause stress on the body so that the body can't heal faster. So if you have an issue like eczema or something that you're trying to heal from, you want to give the body the best chance it has to fight that off. And you do that by reducing the overall stress load of the body, which can be EMF, or it can be toxic chemicals, or it can be nasty food, or it can be emotional stress. You name it. There's lots of different kinds of stress, but stress is the thing that I believe is what breaks down the body the most and allows it to not heal properly.
I absolutely agree with that. And what I also see is that people who have chronic disease are a lot more sensitive to EMF. That the stronger your body is, the stronger those energetic connections are going to be. And you may be able to tolerate more EMF. Now, that doesn't mean you should. You still should be following all of this and decreasing that EMF. But as your body gets weaker and you have more and more chronic disease, EMF affects you more and more and more and more. And so I have some patients who are just so sick right now, multiple layers of disease, autoimmune disease, et cetera. And when they're even close to their phone, they feel horrible. So the more chronic disease you have, the worse it's going to be. And yes, you are not going to be able to heal, especially if you're sleeping right next to your phone. I know a lot of people who just put the phone right there by their brains while they're sleeping at night, and then they have sleep issues and they're wondering, why am I having sleep issues? And you're putting your phone right next to you. So I love everything you're saying here. And for the water, I think that's so important, because I think we only think about the water that's going into our mouth, and we don't really think about the water that is absorbing through our skin when we are showering, when we are, washing our face, brushing our teeth, our sink water. All of that should be filtered. And I do have a question about that. Like, do you recommend a whole house filter, or do you recommend a whole house filter plus a filter at the end point as well, because of those toxins that could be in the pipes?
So a lot of it depends on the water that you're working with. If you're in LA where you're using reclaimed water, like that place like Phoenix, then you need to do a lot more filtration. If you're up in the mountains and you're just pulling it right out of the ground and we're just dealing with minerals, you need a lot less filtration. So you really need to test first to see what we're dealing with, what we're working with. But for my house, we pull it out of the ground. We run it through a water softener because it has hard minerals in it. Then we run it through a whole home filter, which pulls almost everything else out. From there, it goes to the rest of the house. But when it gets to the kitchen, we run it through an RO system, which pretty much takes it down to zero. So then there's nothing in it. But then once it's that pure, you have to add some minerals back into it. It can be leaching on the body if you drink that water just straight. If you're drinking it with a meal, it's usually fine. But we have various different sea salts and minerals that we put back into the water to make it so it's not as leaching on the body.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
important.
you can go next step and structure your water too. So we have a swirl device that we structure the water. Some people believe and rave about that helps a lot more. So it's an extra step you can do.
Can you tell us a little bit about structuring water?
Yeah. So the whole concept is that the water molecule shaped kind of like Mickey Mouse. It has the one molecule with the two attached to it, the two hydrogen with the oxygen. And when they go through the pipes, they get all confused and they're kind of not in order, and they kind of the way they clump together is not in perfect order. When in nature, when water's running down a river or a waterfall, all of these molecules line up and they create this lattice structure, which makes them more absorbable. I mean, I don't know the deep science behind it, but I know enough to know about it a little bit. It's when all those get organized and lined up, then those molecules are absorbed and work in the body much better.
Awesome. Yeah. So
Hopefully I explained that good.
yeah, there's multiple layers of improving your water health. And I mean, even if you just did the first couple of things you said, but you can go really deep, as you mentioned.
Right, and that's the deep level. And it's like that with anything. You can go as deep as you want with this stuff. Same thing with like with your nutrition. You could be locally farm raised, perfect diet, eating window, specific. I mean, same thing with working out. You can go to the gym and have everything dialed in perfect. Or there's some people just getting off the couch and walk around the block is good enough. So
Mhm.
you just meet people where they're at and how farther they want to take it.
So I have a question. I have a regular car and my husband has a Tesla. And I was just wondering if you've seen any issues with EMF when it comes to electric cars or hybrid cars.
Yeah, so electric cars definitely have more EMF. You can imagine just because of the batteries and the motors and the wheels spinning, and then a lot of the new technology, the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth capability, and then all the sensors, with the Tesla. So there's a lot of electronics going on, a lot of EMF, a lot of radio frequency, a lot of magnetic fields, electric fields. So I do have some clients that are really sensitive to EMF that can't do electric cars. Or if they're in electric cars for, 30, 45 minutes, they don't feel as good when they get out of the vehicle because you are exposing yourself to a lot of EMF. And this is the thing with EMF, we're never going to get away from it completely. But if we can focus in on our home and our work environment where we're spending the majority of time, even our bed, our sleeping area, and make sure that these areas are super clean and super clear, then when we go out into the real world and we get exposed to EMF and chemicals and poor air quality, our bodies can withstand it and it can take that a little bit more. But we need to have that break from it. That's really the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, definitely focusing like if you do drive a Tesla, but if you're only on in that car a couple of minutes per day or whatnot, but you're sleeping for 8 to 10 hours a night, and if you have a lot of EMF there, that is really important. And that's also when you regenerate. So it is often about weighing the pros and the cons and picking and choosing your battles. I do agree with you because we just can't get away from all of that in our world today. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I like to start with the sleeping area because you're sleeping, you don't need the technology. We can focus on one area. And I believe it's the highest impact.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of this information. Can you share with us again how we can find you?
Yeah. Testmyhome.com for the website and at testmyhome for Instagram. Those are really the best ways. You can also just jump on YouTube and search Test My Home. There's a ton of content that comes up. You can search my name, Ryan Blaser. It's all very Googleable. We've been out there for a while.
And you have a kit. Can you tell us just, I know you kind of mentioned it already, but tell us a little bit about that. And I think you also have an offer maybe for our listeners so that they can check it out.
Yeah, for $500 off, and it comes with the water test kit, the mold test kit, the air quality test kit, the EMF test kit, and the videos to walk through for the chemical and the gas leak analysis, and then the tools and the forms and the videos to walk you through it. And then it also includes a couple consultations with me or one of my coaches to go through the results and go through your home. So there's a lot of value. That's probably the biggest value if you want to dial in your home is to do that test kit. That's going to give you the most data.
I love this. And I think it's such an important investment when you think about all of the hospital bills that can come later on with chronic disease, with these toxins leaching into your system, the EMF damaging the electrical fields, et cetera. So I think it is an investment that is really well worth it. And and starting with the things you can do at home and then potentially getting specialized advice, I think is really wonderful. So thank you so much for joining me today, Ryan. It's been really wonderful, really educational. And also for the listeners, if you are interested in finding some of these products, we also have a product recommendations page on my website, cleanbody.health/products. So you can also find Ryan's company there in the test kit section. And then also just all the products like the filters and the EMF protectors and all of that. Actually, I did want to ask you about that. Have you noticed EMF protectors or neutralizers? Have you noticed that those work or those help?
So it depends on what the goal is of those, because there are um, there are some of those devices that put out frequencies on a quantum level, and they can affect the body and they can cause therapeutic type effects. When we get into the realm of saying this is eliminating EMF or blocking EMF, a lot of those they're not doing that. They're not, because if you think about it, if I had this sticker and it blocked EMF and I put it on my phone wouldn't work if it truly blocked the frequencies. Or I could put it on my lamp and my lamp would quit shooting out electrons. Like if it truly blocked electrons flowing, which is the thing that's the damaging part, that vibrational flow, then the devices themselves wouldn't work. So I think there's some misconception with what these devices can and can't do. I mean, just like I believe like crystals or energies, or there's these subtle energies that can affect the body, either positive or negative, just like some of these quantum, dependence and some of these things, there's an effect there. But does it block EMF? No. Does it make EMF go away? No. Does it create a force field around your house to protect you from 5G? No. And we have meters that can show that. But is there a quantum effect? Can it have a therapeutic effect? Some of those, yes.
Okay. Well, there you have it. So the best thing to do is really lower those EMFs in general, which I think you gave us some really great recommendations there. So thank you so much for that. All
Yeah.
right, Ryan. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Again, it's been so informational, and definitely check Ryan and Test My Home out if you are looking to clean up the environment, really clean up all of these toxins. Thank you again for joining us today.